All right, before we get started, this is the kind of presentation that has a meme in the title slide. So if that's not what you want, then there are other talks. This is et2 Kerberos. I'm Chris Campbell. I'm a security researcher for the Harris Corporation. I was on the Army Red Team for just over 4 years. I sometimes help on this project known as PowerSploit. This is my third year speaking at DerbyCon, variety of topics. I'm Obscure Sec, not to be confused with Obscure Sex on Twitter. And my blog is obscuresec.com. So bottom line up front, right off the bat, this entire presentation, although Kerberos is in the title of the presentation, it's more about Windows authentication as a whole. But the bottom line is if your enterprise has ever been compromised, if your hashes have ever been dumped, you may still be compromised, even if you've gone back and changed every single password. So I've given talks about Pass the Hash in the past with Skip Duckwall. He couldn't be here this year. But we've used this in a couple of those presentations, and I just added the still, because although Microsoft's done a lot to try to fix Pass the Hash and some of the other problems, all of the problems still exist. So Skip and I have given a couple Pass the Hash presentations. The first one was still passing the hash 15 years later at Black Hat 2012. We gave, 2013, we gave Pass the Hash 2, Admin's Revenge. And then he and Benjamin Delpy just gave a Kerberos talk at Black Hat. And then here we did Puff Puff Pass, getting the most from your hash. So I wanted to quickly go through all of those. Did anybody see any of those talks? Awesome. So I want to quickly go through those slide decks and pull out material just to get everyone on the same page. And I thought the best way to do that was to go through all the memes that we used. So the first one is the fact that what we're talking about when we're talking about Pass the Hash is not the dump the local admin password and then use it across different machines. You know, the first domino in knocking over an enterprise lateral movement. Microsoft's actually done a really good job of fixing that. What we're talking about is dumping the hashes and then impersonating users on the network. So the biggest problem people have with this concept is they don't think we're going to get the hashes, which is not something I've ever ran into. Going on 7 years as a pen tester, I've almost always got the hashes. So everyone in this room, can we agree that it is a lot easier to knock over an enterprise than most people think? Yes. So, another meme that we used. And the point of using this was we're going after data, not shells. So we're using the hashes and we're going after specific sets of data, which means that the data might be in SharePoint. So Skip actually went through and patched a bunch of utilities, and we released those a couple years ago, Pass the Hash Suite. And one of the coolest things and most useful things in the Pass the Hash Suite is Pass the Hash Firefox. Has anyone used Pass the Hash Firefox before? A couple people. It makes it a lot easier to demonstrate risk when you're able to gain access to data that resides on, say, a SharePoint server. Anything that uses NTLM SSP, a lot of perimeter devices, servers are using NTLM SSP. So once we've gone in and knocked over the enterprise and taken the hashes, then we don't need shells. We don't need to beacon out. We can, from the outside, be any user that we want on those servers. So to continue that point, that includes databases, SQL, and just about anything else you can pass the hash to. So this is really what I'm talking about. What we were talking about is not so much the domino analogy of using Pass the Hash to further lateral movement. It's more, once you've taken the domain, you can then use those hashes to be anybody, and there's no checks. So the problem in Kerberos is that there's no way for you to know what is a valid ticket or what is a valid login for NTLM with pass the hash, and what is someone actually using the pass the hash attack. Is everyone familiar with the scene? They dress up like the soldiers, right? And nobody notices who they are. So why are we still talking about pass the hash? I was told that I never put kittens in my presentation, so you're welcome. Why are we still talking about pass the hash? Well, because it still works. So can everyone read my shirt? It's a true story. And this is where it happened. So the many that he was referring to included myself, apparently. So the Microsoft guys basically said that you can't fix pass the hash, and this was one of the first times they came out and really explained it, because it is built in with the way that they designed single sign-on. So because they believe your users, our users, would not want to put their password in every single time they access something, we have to live with this vulnerability that's been around for 21 years. So that is Microsoft saying it can't be fixed, if you can read that. All right, so then they released a white paper a couple years ago, and they've updated it. It's actually got a lot of really good information in it. Who's read the white paper? A lot of people. That's good. It's several hundred pages, so most people didn't read the entire thing. Skip and I took several evenings and tore it apart, and they fixed some of our points, and others they just outright disagree with us. Did anybody see this happen this past year? Yes. So they posted a patch for pass the hash, and then there was a whole bunch of news articles about how pass the hash is fixed, it's dead. It's obviously not, and they went back and changed the name of it, Update to Improve Credential Protection and Management. So Will Harmjoy did a great blog post that day or the next day, which he went through and tested to demonstrate that, in fact, once you apply the patch, that nothing really changes from a pen test perspective. As long as you're not using it as the first domino lateral movement type attack, once you've dumped the hashes, you can still impersonate any user on the network. So Mr. Grimes writes a lot of articles. This one is not his best work. So Microsoft has armor-plated Windows 8.1 against the most feared attack on the planet. There are actually several articles, and I just picked this one because of the headline, where they've laid out, because of that patch and the information that was put out by Microsoft, they actually convinced a lot of people that they had fixed this problem, and in fact, they had done nothing to stop it. So this is how I get blocked by Mark Rusinovich on Twitter. So I told him that there's no pass the hash mitigation in anything. Basically, all the stuff released by Microsoft has to do with token manipulation in memory, credentials in plaintext credentials, or recoverable credentials in memory. Absolutely nothing they've done has really anything to do with pass the hash. And I don't get it. If anyone here does get it and can explain it to me, Mark will not, because he blocked me on Twitter. Except when he unblocked me to comment on my shirt. So he approves. I am still blocked. He reblocked me. Classic. So this is basically my favorite thing ever, is when a company does something that opens them up to be trolled. So Microsoft Security had a contest. Did anybody enter? A couple people entered the contest. Awesome. So they used askpth, ask pass the hash, hashtag, and all you had to do was ask them a question, and then you would be entered to win a Xbox One. So I'm a troll. So I just started rattling off my favorite questions. So those are a few of my favorite ones. I think nobody wins with Pass the Hash. But they were supposed to announce the winner, and I'm probably on my way to getting blocked by Microsoft security on Twitter, because they never announced who won. So then other hackers started getting involved. So that's Script Junkie and Chris Gates. Those are two of my favorite other questions. That bottom one, if you didn't know, Microsoft basically just changed an offset to break Mimikatz with one of the patches. It provided no value. It did nothing but break Mimikatz. So all of our users, all of our admins had to push a patch and track it just to break a hacking tool. Did you guys see this? So in their fix for Pass the Hash, they actually introduced the only thing you couldn't pass the hash to was RDP. So then they added the new restricted admin feature, which allows you to pass the hash to RDP. Yep, thank you, Microsoft. So I don't think this was someone trolling him. If it was, well done. Didn't Kerberos address a lot of these problems? Because there were talks given here, DEF CON, Black Hat, where people got up and explained that Kerberos is the solution to pass the hash. And even Mark Rusinovich knows that that is not the case. So I want to tell you a quick story about this guy, Kerberos TGT. He's on your network right now, whether you realize it or not. He's one of the first users on a newly created domain. Does anyone know what this account does? It is used, it is a backdoor. It is used to sign its hash. It's randomized when it's created, when the domain's created. It's used to sign all of the tickets, the Kerberos tickets. So he's seen a lot of stuff, from when you thought it was a good idea to use group policy preferences, to DCOM, to MSA 08067. Does everyone remember when everyone was a domain admin? Like 2004, 2005, 6, 14, yeah. And then there's Heartbleed. So that knocked over a lot of VPNs, so a lot of compromises recently. Just a side note, anybody see this? So that's two really recent, Heartbleed and a bug called Bash, are two recent examples of how an enterprise, even though it didn't specifically affect Windows, and Microsoft does a really good job of patching vulnerabilities, and they have a great bug bounty program, and they're really nice to some researchers. Other vulnerabilities do affect their security. I do think Apple could fix that by installing a better shell. So I got a little silly with the memes, and so let's keep that going. So I knocked over a lot of enterprises with group policy preferences. Any pen testers here? Quite a few. Are you familiar with group policy preferences? Did you see that Microsoft patched group policy preferences? Did you see that it doesn't actually remove any existing group policy preferences? Yep, so they're still out there. A lot of people are getting away from NTLM and going full Kerberos. So that was Benjamin Delpy. So here's the problem. If you do net user Kerberos TGT on your domain, or any domain that you're on, you can see when the last time that hash was set. In this case, it was August of 2004. So this is a real enterprise that if they had ever been compromised from August 8th, 2004 to now, if the hashes were ever dumped, every domain admin who left the company, who had domain admin rights, all those people who didn't need domain admin rights, all of those people would have had access to be able to get this hash and can now create and sign valid Kerberos tickets. So I started looking around, and I didn't think I was going to find many, but it turns out there are a lot of Kerb TGT hashes out there. Here's one on Pastebin. I actually had a customer who had a previous pen test report, and in the report was the Kerb TGT hash because that particular company uses it to prove that they dumped the domain hashes. So in all their pen test reports, they're putting the very thing that you need to become a domain admin in the reports. So some of you know who this gentleman is. So that's paraphrasing, but I believe he told Senate that healthcare.gov is secure because they scan. And these are the kinds of people that are out there telling people that they don't have to worry about Kerberos and Kerb TGT. So I had this same slide in a previous deck. It really doesn't belong in this talk, but I just wanted to be able to do that and close the loop with him. So I guess the bottom line is leave it to the experts who aren't wearing pants. So I used this meme at DEF-CON, and I got absolutely no laughs, like not one. So replaying that, and it worked. Thanks, guys. So this could be a really boring talk if I actually went through and tried to explain to you how Kerberos works. So here's a quick picture that you can look at later. There are lots of better ones. This one I did with, looks like Visio 97, but... But going back, why am I talking about Kerberos? It all started back when we were building our slide deck and our presentation for Black Hat in 2012. And we wanted to put some mitigations at the end. You know, how do we move forward? So the talk was all about pass the hash. And in looking at Kerberos, we actually read the spec and we read everything on MSDN, and Skip and I realized that dumping the hashes completely undermines all of Kerberos. So because Kerberos and Microsoft's implementation is to use the Kerb TGT hash, everything is built on top of NTLM. So we theorized, and this is from our white paper in 2012, that we could spoof the pack, so we created this attack. That was before logos were required for tools. So we created the spoof pack attack, and we were told that it would never work by several Microsoft developers. Well, we were pretty sure, and then there was this guy who decided to take that one step further. And if you don't see what we're doing there, we're just adding a normal user we're adding group membership for that ticket into enterprise admins. That user's not going to be in enterprise admins. They will just have all the rights of that group assigned to them for this session. So it's actually a pretty stealthy attack. But Benjamin was like, you guys are burying the lead here. We didn't even realize that you could go beyond just spoofing the pack. You could spoof everything in the ticket. So he decided to code up the golden ticket attack, complete with a much better name, add it to Mimikatz, send it out, and it works very well. Has anyone used the golden ticket attack? A couple people? It can be pretty devastating. Like, for example, if you run a CFP and or a CTF, sorry, and you assign an enterprise to multiple teams, and they all are clones of each other, then the Kerb TGT hash is the same, such that if any of the teams get compromised, all of the teams are compromised. That happened. All right, so the golden ticket attack, and the reason it's called the golden ticket is that you can spoof the lifetime. So the big benefit of Kerberos tickets over hashes is that it's time to find, 10 minutes, an hour. You can go in and set that. With the golden ticket, you could create a ticket that's good for 10 years, 100 years. As long as the Kerb TGT hash hasn't changed, it'll be valid for that period of time. But it doesn't really matter because you can create tickets whenever you want for whatever purpose. So the lifetime of the ticket isn't as big a deal. There's a great tutorial that Raphael Mudge did, if you want to check that out. All the golden ticket stuff has been integrated into his tool. It's really easy to use. If you're not doing it, you should definitely, and you're a pen tester, and you should definitely check that out. So the mitigation for the golden ticket attack and the Kerb TGT problem doesn't really exist. There's no documentation. Microsoft's aware of this problem. They've acknowledged it. About the only thing you can do is reset the Kerb TGT account, and all you do is go to the account and right-click, but you have to do it twice. When you do that, you will literally break everything in your enterprise. Nothing will work until most of the clients have been rebooted, and most of the servers as well. So nobody's doing this, so you're going to see every Kerb TGT hash out there being as old as the entire enterprise is. There is one interesting thing that you can do. I would never recommend this, but if you're still running at a functional level of 2003, if you upgrade to 2008, because they made some changes within the security providers, it goes in and knocks out the Kerb TGT hash and resets it. Unfortunately, the only real mitigation is to not get owned or owned again. There was a paper. Did anybody read this white paper? 7 pages. It's really quick. Covers a lot of the same stuff that I've just talked about in the last few minutes. There's the link to it. It's mitigating the pass the ticket on Active Directory, but it's the golden ticket problem. So detecting this is really difficult. It's a needle in a haystack. It's even harder to detect than pass the hash. There have been some people looking for irregular Kerberos tickets, long lifetimes. So that goes back to why the golden ticket, the forever ticket, is probably not a good thing to use, because when you use it, that's a potential signature that can be detected. So you're probably going to want to stick with what the domain is actually using. And then look for low privileged accounts performing privileged actions. So when I use this attack, it is taking some user that is on the box legitimate and then adding them to an account, or adding them to a group that they're not actually a member of temporarily for that ticket. So pass the ticket, which is similar to golden ticket and spoof pack, is basically the same single sign-on problem. Because you don't have to put your password in to hit some network resource somewhere, that ticket can be replayed for the length of its lifetime. So the ticket lifetime is something that a lot of people have thought, it's a really good thing. I've seen a lot of network defenders write blog posts about the ticket lifetime, shortening it. But pen testers, how long does it take you from the time you get on a box to the time you own the enterprise normally? Days? 30 seconds. Right. Probably minutes. You're probably going to be within the timeline of the ticket. So both Mimikatz and WCE support pass the ticket. So Benjamin and Skip gave an awesome talk at Black Hat. Did anybody get to go to that talk? A couple people went to it. It's so chock full of detail. One of the cool things that they released is what they're calling Overpass the Ticket. Side note, Benjamin's got some really cool new Kerberos stuff that'll be coming out in the next few weeks. So he's releasing it. We're all giving a talk at Blue Hat. So Overpass the Ticket, basically he discovered that there's a completely different way to undermine Kerberos and accomplish essentially the same thing. So you're able to dump separate hashes other than just the user's hash and the Kerberos TGT hash, and then you can actually create tickets for non-existent users and put them in non-existent groups, or put them in real groups, and then individually assign rights. So in the logs, when you go back and you try to figure out what happened, this action was performed by some non-existent user based on rights of some non-existent group. So if you're using logs to go back and figure out what happened, you're going to have a bad day. And I just missed a meme opportunity right here. So again, abusing Microsoft Kerberos, even Skip and Benjamin got in on the Rusinovich trolling there. Sorry, you guys don't get it. It's a great talk. Does anyone know if it's up on YouTube? I started looking for it and I couldn't find it. But the slides are in multiple places on the Black Hat site, and then Benjamin shared it on SlideShare. So where are we now? It's 2014. We've been talking about Pass the Hash forever, and it still works. It's not going away, and it can't be patched. Smart cards are not the answer, people. I don't know if you're aware of this, but smart cards suffer from the same problem. The implementation that Microsoft used to put smart cards in the enterprise sets a random password that never changes. So just like the Kerberos TGT problem, now all of your users have hashes that will never change. So once the domain gets knocked over, all of your users can, regardless of whether they get new smart cards, all of their hashes will still work with Pass the Hash. Yeah, if you use GPP, your passwords are still sitting in groups.xml or whatever you were using GPP. So go delete them. Kerberos TGT is probably still there with the same hash as when you created your domain. So hopefully at some point during this talk, you've thought about your enterprise and thought about some incident that happened, whether it was somebody that shouldn't have been a domain admin was a domain admin, some disgruntled person left as a domain admin, or as Will brought up in his talk, from the attacker's perspective, they didn't have to know about this to still use it today. If they knocked over and took the hashes, everyone takes the hashes, they can now come back and be domain admin, 10 years later without much effort. So the logs are pretty much worthless if you're using them to try to figure out lateral movement. All of that could be spoofed. And Kerberos isn't the answer, and there's nothing on the horizon as far as Microsoft has shared. What's next is nothing. It is what we have today. So there's some good general advice on fixing Pass the Hash and other problems by Matt Weeks, Script Junkie. He gave a talk here last year. Did anybody go to his talk last year? He and I disagree on a lot of things. He was a defender for a long time. I was on the other side for a long time. But the guidance is really good. It's all the same. It's all very good advice. And then there's a recent paper written by H.D. Moore and Joe Bialik of Microsoft on mitigating service account credential theft. It's not directly related to any of the Kerberos problems or the Pass the Hash problems, but it's got a lot of great advice. So before I go into thanks, hold on. So I'm going to do a quick demo of basically how I like to use the golden ticket and Mimikatz. So what we're simulating is a user, limited.user, who has no rights. He's not a domain admin. He's not even a local admin on his own box. Wow. That just happened. And Microsoft trolls back. So I flew through those slides, and it's going to take a minute for this blue screen to... Did that not show? Did you not see that at blue screen? Oh. Here, I'll give you, see if we can get that. Oh my God. All right, so we're doing net group domain admins. So only administrators in there, which is probably how it should be. So he's got to read this ASAP. It's really important. I gotta pause this in a second. So he got this phishing email that I'm simulating. Is that enough hammer time? All right, so what this is doing is it's an Office macro. It's a technique that's worked forever and still works today for some reason. You send users Office documents, they're going to open them, even if they have to enable the macro. What this is going to pull down is invoke mimikatz from PowerSploit. Has anyone ever used PowerSploit? A couple people. Joe Bialik wrote this script. It will reflectively load Benjamin Delpy's mimikatz directly into memory. So it's going Office macro, pulling down PowerShell, pulling down more PowerShell, and then dropping this DLL reflectively loaded into memory. And then it's going to pass it all the commands to forge a temporary domain admin ticket and then add that user to domain admins. So that last step isn't required at all. You could do anything. But obviously, you have to be a domain admin to put someone in the domain admins. So maybe they have remorse, maybe they don't. So PowerShell fires up. This is the first one, not the one with mimikatz, because it would be huge. So now you see limited.user is now a member. So with a single phishing email, we've accomplished something without having to do any actual hacking. So once we've knocked over a domain, we can come back with using the Kerb TGT hash. We can easily tailor our payloads to privilege escalate on their own. So persistence is obviously a lot easier that way. So thanks to Kerberos, if your domain's ever been compromised, it's that easy for an attacker to come back in. Oh, well, that would have been awesome. So a bunch of people that are here. Oh my God. I know. They win. Why is it doing that? Yep, that's what I did. All right, So obviously, big thanks to Skip and Benjamin. They did almost all of the heavy lifting on all of that. Joe Bialik wrote Invoke Mimikatz. Will Peteroy is just generally awesome. Apparently, I'm supposed to refer to someone here as Carlos Spicy Wiener. I've been instructed to only refer to Matt Graber as Manifestation. So if you see him, he is Manifestation. Raphael Mudge, Will Schroeder, everybody. So this is my contact information. I am pretty actively trolling people on Twitter. That's my email. Are there any questions? None? All right, thanks guys.